Hey guys, so I wanted to make this video to piggyback a little bit off of my recent fat loss series, which kind of spilled over into the carb series, but a little bit during the fat loss series. And if you haven't already watched that series, I highly recommend it. Every woman that watched it said that it kind of changed their life. And honestly, it kind of changed my life actually sitting down and putting the information out in that way. It was really nice to hear it from myself too. Sometimes I actually have all this information bouncing around in my head, but when I actually get it down onto paper, it ends up teaching me too. So, if you haven't watched that fat loss series, please go watch it. But a lot of you guys expressed a lot of interest in the mindset tips or the mindset topics that I talked about in that series. And I thought, you know what, let's sit down and talk about mindset. Let's sit down and talk about some of the things that have really changed my life and things that I've learned along my health journey that if I could tell myself 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and really accept that and take that in and use it to shape my journey would have looked a lot different. My health journey was really, really hard. It was not easy. It was very frustrating, as I'm sure a lot of yours is and was too. I'm sure a lot of you are still going through your health journey as I am. And there are so many things that if I would have known what I know now, and so many things that I'm just learning like this past year, last year, and this year that have really just shaped my whole outlook and changed my ability to heal, and also has just changed the way that I approach healing, but also how I approach my education for you guys and how I approach, client work and just my work and my career in general. So I just want to share that with you today. If you guys are new to this channel, my name is Jessica Ash. I'm a functional nutritionist and just a general hormone nerd. I love connecting biological truths to actionable steps so you guys can learn to understand your physiology and biology. Use that as a lens of wisdom to really view knowledge, because health and wellness knowledge is not going anywhere. There's so much information out there, but I believe that our physiology and our biology is the context that we need to really view this knowledge through. And so I love helping you guys take actionable steps to really increase your quality of life. And if you like what I talk about here, as of now, what I offer is my signature online course, Fully Nourished, which is really a blueprint that teaches you how to restore your metabolism and balance your hormones using nutrition. I also have my mini course, Mend Your Cycle, which is just a 90-minute course that gives you 11 action steps to kind of get you in the door and kind of give you a taste of what Fully Nourished will offer you, but it's kind of an easy, small entry, just kind of a really great place to get started. So if you're interested in more, you can check out my paid courses, or you can also check out my free trainings. I have a couple that really help a lot of women, and they're always linked down below. With that being said, let's get started. So I can't really talk about mindset without talking a little bit more about my health journey, which started when I was a teenager. I had hormone issues and PCOS symptoms right when I went through puberty. And I remember having a super, super long period that lasted 6 weeks, and my mom was really concerned. I was like, I think 13 or 14 at the time. She took me to the doctor, and I still remember to this day being told I had low progesterone. And so what was the doctor's fix? It was, oh, I'm going to put you on a low progesterone pill and it will help fix all your problems, right? And so therefore I was put on birth control at a very young age. Fast forward a couple years later, I started to get interested in health and fitness, and I was still, I think, like 17 or 18 at the time. And so I just decided to go off the pill. I didn't think anything of it. I couldn't even remember why I was taking it in the first place. And within 6 months, my health just kind of hit the fan. It was a nightmare. As a lot of you who have struggled with post-birth control symptoms, you know that it can just feel like there's something wrong with you, but no one's acknowledging it. And, my issues just continued to spiral out of control. No one could help me. And they really spiraled into many different issues. I had so many different symptoms, and these symptoms eventually were classified as PCOS and different autoimmune disorders. All the while I was scared. I didn't understand what was happening to me. I thought I did something wrong, and I was also experiencing the wave of these symptoms, which of course are just overwhelming. They affect your quality of life, and it can make you feel like you are so uncomfortable in your own skin because you feel like you can no longer trust your body. And that can lead to a lot of trauma in and of itself. I think a lot of people underestimate what it feels like to be told that there's nothing wrong when you know there's something wrong. I think people underestimate what it feels like when you're trying to figure out what's wrong with you and you can't. And I think people underestimate the trauma that comes from just trying different things and feeling okay for a little while and having that taste of feeling a little bit better and then reverting back and feeling worse than before. And so, if you're experiencing that or you're on your health journey and you've had a similar experience, I just want you to know that you're not alone, and I've experienced that too. And, after almost 10 years now of my healing journey and my health journey and all that I've learned and all the certifications and continuing education I've taken, it's really interesting to me that not one of the things, and I've spent thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of hours studying the body and studying research, but none of those things can teach you the mindset part of it until you kind of have that aha moment. And it's taken me a really long time to have that aha moment. I think it's because I'm someone that's very type A. I'm someone that's very much a go-getter. I achieve. And I have always been somebody that prided myself on being able to just get it done. Regardless of what it takes, I'll do what it takes to get it done. And I'm now realizing that really required a lot of control, and I wouldn't give up control, and that in and of itself held me back from healing fully, and that in and of itself really has in a lot of ways attributed to some of my stress symptoms and some of my hormonal imbalances. And so as I've learned that the past 2-3 years, it's really shifted the way that I approach hormones, and it's really shifted the way that I approach myself as well. I used to be very, very strict and restrictive with my eating. I used to be very, very rigid. So whatever I was following, whether it was keto or intermittent fasting or even macros, it was always with a lot of rigidity and control. And so that can in and of itself be very stressful. And I've learned that doesn't actually promote health. Oftentimes it takes away from it. So I just want to share the 5 main things that I've learned, and they kind of go into one another and kind of just piggyback off of what I was just talking about. But these are things that I really want to teach you, and I really want you to hold on to. And if you need to come back to this video and be reminded again, please do it, because it's so important, and I wish I would have saw it as important earlier on in my journey, honestly. And the first thing is that my body is truly for me and not against me. And I'm going to say that again. My body is for me and not against me. No matter what it is, even if it's the most crazy symptoms, the most uncomfortable symptoms, oftentimes the body is doing that so you can continue to survive. It is a sign of a deep imbalance, and it's trying to not just set off a red alert, but it's often happening for a very specific reason. And a lot of times you can track symptoms back to actually being a protective mechanism for XYZ thing. And as I've heard this and then actually accepted this over the years, it's been much easier for me to sit back and observe symptoms with much more of a detachment. So, I talk about this a lot with my colleagues, and if you've listened to podcasts that podcast interviews that I've been on, or conversations I've had with other people in this space, you'll often hear me talk about that the body is constantly fighting for balance, and the body is constantly doing things for our own good. The body's constantly trying to keep us surviving, right? But I actually think it is more than that. Oftentimes the body's trying to protect us from something that we don't see, and so it's doing that by manipulating something else over here. So as you begin to see that your body is working for you and not against you, you can really kind of take a step back and detach yourself from when symptoms pop up. Because as I've talked about with a lot of colleagues, healing is a journey, and it's never truly a destination. You never really make it anywhere. You're actually your body is constantly dynamic, and everything that we do either makes it more or less resilient to stress. And Stress can be good or bad, right? Stress can be having a baby and having kids, or stress can be like hating your job. So there's always going to be stress in the sense of our body is always going to have to respond and use the resources it's provided. And so we're never going to truly have perfect health. I think a lot of us are in the pursuit of perfect health. And I want to just stop that right now. We're never going to have perfect health. And it's not really about having perfect health. It's actually about having a body that helps us rise up and meet the occasion that is our life, right? And helps us meet the demands that we need to meet in life, and that's really it. And so there are going to be things that pop up along the way, and these, you can choose to call these things signs, or sometimes they're symptoms, or as we uncover certain parts about ourselves, or as we're exposed to new things, or maybe we take on a new growth challenge. Like, for example, maybe you start doing emotional work, and maybe you start working with a therapist, or working with an EFT practitioner, or maybe you start doing more body work, and maybe you start strength training and sweating, and all that junk starts coming out of your body. That emotional trauma starts to come up, or that the physical junk that was stored starts to come up, and your body has to meet that demand. And maybe your body has to deal with the junk and you experience a symptom, right? And so when we experience symptoms, it can be very helpful to remind ourselves and remember that our body is for us and not against us. And even symptoms are usually the body's way of handling something or taking care of something. And as long as we're making sure we're meeting the needs of the body, we can really trust that it's going to take care of something for us. I'll use, I've been having some histamine issues lately. You can probably see it on my neck. I'm a little bit red. And it's because I've been really working on my minerals, working on my detoxification. And also I've been doing a lot of emotional work, and then I've been doing myofascial work, and that has been bringing a lot of junk to the surface. And I know that histamine is the way that the body responds to an emergency, right? And so I could freak out and say, oh my gosh, I'm having histamine issues. What can I do to fix it? Or I can just say, you know what, the histamine is a little high because my body's responding to an emergency right now, and I'm going to let my body do its thing, support it as much as possible. And then if it gets worse and it doesn't get better, maybe I'll reassess and maybe add something in to maybe assist my body. That's it. And I'm able to kind of almost look at it as a third-party observer and not let it just rip me to shreds in fear or worry or doubt, and just kind of go with the flow and practice the mantra, it is what it is. And so it all goes back to that truth where my body is for me, it's not against me, and I can trust that as long as it's getting its needs met, it's going to handle it, and I can trust the process. So that, I wish I would have grasped that a long time ago instead of just chasing each and every symptom, because I did chase each and every symptom for so long, and it just cost me so much money. It was so frustrating, it was so time consuming, and it caused me a lot of fear and stress that I didn't need. And I wish I would have done something differently, but I've learned what I've learned, and now moving forward, I will never let myself do that to my body again, or to myself again. The second thing that I've learned is food and supplementation are not everything. And the reason I bring this up is because there are probably people that you know or that you've come across that don't eat very well, that have really poor habits, and yet they still are a lot healthier than some of the people that have horrible habits, horrible nutrition, don't take any supplements. And doesn't it ever make you wonder, why? It's not luck, it's not genes. There are things that affect our health that are not nutrition and not supplementation. And the reason I bring this up is not to be discouraging, but to actually remind you that if you put 100% of your energy and your effort and your time and your money into food and supplementation and you don't feel better, that doesn't mean put more of your energy or more of your time or more of your money into that. It might actually mean take a step back and ask yourself, are there other areas of my life that are pulling from my resources faster than I can actually add to my resources using these foods and supplements? And oftentimes that's yes. So oftentimes we have to look at our health as a whole, and it's often our lifestyle that's draining us, whether it's we've bought too many things that we can't afford. We've created a lifestyle that we no longer can afford it, or we no longer want to work the job that is required to afford it. Sometimes it's that we've like got ourselves into kind of this place with relationships, whether that's, partnerships or friendships, where we have no boundaries and people are taking from us more than they're giving, and so we're kind of in the negative there. A lot of times there are way more aspects to health than our food and supplements, and if the food and supplements aren't enough for you, instead of focusing more control on that, it's probably a good idea to take a step back and say, whoa, I need to deal with all the other baggage, all the other things that are draining me faster than I can replenish. And sometimes that requires work, right? It requires having hard conversations. It requires sometimes causing people pain. It requires awkwardness, if you have to tell people no, or you have to communicate to people. All those things are hard. I'm not saying that it's easy, just like changing your food or changing your supplements or adding in supplements or changing your habits. Those things weren't easy either, but you were able to do them slowly and make big changes over time. And the same thing goes for every other area of your life. And this is something that I learned my lesson on, because I was one of those people that always said yes to everything, always said yes to everyone. I would be doing 1,000 things in a week and never have like one chance to just have some time alone with myself. And I would just spend so much money on supplements and so much money on food and like put so much control over those aspects of my life. But every other place in my life just felt so out of control. And as I took a step back, I realized that I actually could focus and control my nutrition and supplements less and have a lot more freedom there and a lot less stress there, as long as I started focusing and dealing with the other things that were just draining the life out of me. And so I just want to remind you guys that food and supplementation is not everything. And if you feel like you're doing everything right there, it's probably that you are, and there's other things in your life that are draining your energy faster than you can replenish. The third thing I've learned is that emotions play a huge role in our health journey, but it's not about the emotion itself. It's actually about how we handle the emotion. So a lot of us are driven by emotions that we would consider negative, right? Emotions like fear or guilt or shame. And a lot of it is because of either like childhood trauma or just trauma over the years. And these emotions are, interestingly, activate our sympathetic nervous system, or that fight or flight nervous system. And we can train our nervous system either way, right? We can train our nervous system to react out of fear, guilt, or shame, or we can train our nervous system to react out of those more parasympathetic emotions like curiosity and excitement and wonder and joy, right? You can think of like what a small child reacts to the world around them like. And what I've learned is dealing with those emotions and actually working through them and allowing them to be released from the body has been one of the most powerful things for me, but also I've noticed it has been the most powerful thing for my clients. And it's really not about not experiencing fear or not experiencing shame or not experiencing guilt, because those emotions will bubble up, but it's allowing those emotions to come out, facing them and looking them in the face and saying, I'm going to do what I need to do anyways. And I found a lot of freedom from using the emotional freedom technique. I've also been following this girl on Instagram, Heal with Mandy. That's her handle. And I found just a lot of just really nice little nuggets in her information that have really helped me. It's really about allowing ourselves to feel emotion. And a lot of us have trained ourselves to not be allowed to feel emotion, and it actually is storing within our body, causing so many problems and so many stress symptoms. And a lot of our hormonal imbalances are stemming from a lot of stress. And so just making sure that we are not letting those emotions of survival like fear and shame and guilt drive us and drive our everyday decisions and drive our very being. The fourth thing that I've learned, which kind of goes into what I just said, was I've learned the power of letting go, giving yourself a lot of grace and self-compassion and not trying to control every little thing. And actually making the big admission, the most scary admission of all, which is I'm not in control of anything. I'm not actually even in control of my symptoms or my body. The only thing that I have control over is actually just my habits. Everything else is going to be an outcome of my habits, but it actually might not go the way that I want. And I don't have control over it. And that can be a really scary thing to admit to ourselves, that we have really very little control. But I think some of us, that makes us so afraid that we actually try to control things more, right? We try to become more perfect with our food habits, or we try to do more working out, or, more things that we need to do or accomplish. And that is in and of itself kind of a distraction, but also a punishment. And there's nothing really about that is having compassion towards oneself. And I think it's really important throughout this journey to have compassion for yourself, because just like a child, you would never expect a child to be perfect. And we have to kind of reparent ourselves and kind of treat ourselves like children, because oftentimes we learn pretty bad habits growing up, and practice that self-compassion that maybe we were never shown, or maybe we were and we just have forgotten it. But either way, it's really important to really evaluate your relationship with control, and reevaluate your relationship with yourself. Because oftentimes if you feel the need to control yourself and control your body, it's because you're actually feeling very out of control. And that's something that I've learned personally, is that the more compassion you have for yourself, and the farther you get away from those fight or flight emotions like fear and shame and guilt, the easier it is to actually give yourself grace, let things go, and just kind of say it is what it is. That's actually one of the hardest things, right? It's very hard to be compassionate. It's very hard to be kind and patient. It's easy to be snappy. It's easy to be controlling. It's easy to be triggered and to react to everything, be super reactionary. It's actually very hard to practice self-compassion and to give yourself endless grace, and to skin your knees and then just get back up again the next day and try it again. And to tell yourself, you know what, tomorrow is a new day, you're safe, you're cared for, and let's try again tomorrow. That actually takes a lot of strength. And so, that's not being weak, that's being strong. But the less you try to control the outcome, the happier you will be. And then the last and probably the most important thing that I've learned, which all the things I just talked about, you have to kind of get those down before you can really accept this one, which is to actually lean into discomfort rather than constantly jerk away from it or shy away from it. And what I mean by this is healing is often very uncomfortable. I don't know if you've ever experienced a massage, or you've ever done trigger pointing with a little tennis ball or lacrosse ball, or maybe you've done foam rolling. You know that when you work on a sore muscle, it can be really uncomfortable, right? Your first reaction, it can actually be I don't even want to press on it. But then you kind of take a deep breath and you're like, okay, I gotta massage it out, rub it out, stretch it out. And even though it kind of hurts, it's kind of uncomfortable while you're doing it, while you're stretching, while you're working on that muscle, afterwards you feel so much better, because it allowed blood flow and circulation to actually get into that muscle and heal that tissue, right? And the same thing can be thought of during our healing journey. When you're actually doing true healing work and you're actually getting to the root of an issue, it's not always fun or pretty. And it can often feel really, really uncomfortable. Sometimes symptoms can pop up because the body is now dealing with a new kind of threat. Sometimes you can just kind of feel off, you just feel uncomfortable in your own skin. Sometimes your body's kind of recalibrating and you're kind of relearning what it means to be who you are. Maybe you've had to gain a little bit of weight and you're still not quite comfortable with where you're at, and so you're having to buy new clothes and find the different styles of clothes that work for your new body now. All of those things are uncomfortable, right? And we can choose to just shy away and say I hate this, I want it to change, I hate you, I hate all these things, and I think a lot of people will lash out at me on social media because they're experiencing that discomfort. And I understand where they're coming from. It's one of those things where we have to practice enough self-awareness to say, I know this is uncomfortable, and it's okay to admit that it sucks, but that usually means we're in the right place. it's kind of darkness comes right before the dawn, which is super cliche, but oftentimes where we experience the most discomfort, that's where we're going to actually experience the most change and growth. And so we have to learn to determine between something being like uncomfortable because it's not working and something that's actually just uncomfortable because we're actually moving in the right direction. And we know the difference deep in our guts. And so I encourage you to give yourself permission that it's okay to feel afraid. It's okay to feel uneasy, and yeah, it's super uncomfortable when you're healing. It kind of sucks, honestly. Like, it can be really crappy sometimes, but also you sometimes get those glimpses of light where you realize your hard work is paying off, and it's so worth it. And in those times, remember to really encourage yourself and remind yourself how far you've come, and give yourself tons and tons of self-compassion, and really just remind yourself all the work you've done, because that's going to really carry you through those times where it just feels kind of uncomfortable and you kind of have those doubts about the direction that you're headed in. But it's okay to be afraid and to still keep going. And it's okay to feel a little bit of discomfort and continue to keep going. I know that's really contrary in our culture that is only about like just feeling comfortable and feeling safe, but that's actually good and often means that you're making progress and you're headed in the right direction. So I wish I would have learned that, because before, and a lot of times early on in my health journey, if I started doing something or I started moving in the right direction, now I can look back and say I was moving in the right direction, I would experience a symptom and I would just back off and I would say like, well, that's not working for me. I'm not doing that anymore. And it kept me from making any progress, because every time I experienced something that I deemed negative, a negative symptom or a negative emotion, I would just shy away because I didn't want to feel the discomfort. I didn't want to feel any more pain. And I practice self-compassion now, and I can look back and say, well, I was already experiencing so many symptoms, so I understand why I didn't want to experience symptoms again. I really was just desperate to feel better. I understand why I did it. But at the same time, it kept me from going in the right direction for so long. And so now that I have learned from the school of life, I can confidently say that it's okay to feel discomfort and to continue to go anyway. And it's sometimes actually good to lean into it and let it guide you in the right direction. So let these things accompany you through your healing journey, whether you're in Fully Nourished or, you're just starting to maybe follow some of the pro-metabolic principles that I share about on my page, on my Instagram page or my YouTube, or maybe you're just a new student, or maybe you're actually an OG Fully Nourished student and you're like, these are not things that I've quite learned yet. I just want to remind you to kind of like carry these with you and keep them in the back of your mind, even if, you're not quite there yet or you don't quite understand what these things mean. Just please listen to them. Please refer back to them, because I now can see that these mindset shifts are a must for really sustainably treating yourself well in the future. And if you're interested in learning what has brought about the most change in my mindset, just let me know in the comments below, and I can make a whole separate video on my experience with myofascial release and the emotional freedom technique and journaling and reparenting. Those are some things that have really helped me just really shift my perspective, alongside of just, experiencing the rapid growth on social media that I have the past couple of years. My relationship with social media was a blaring symptom for me that I had to take a step back and really deal with the internal crap that was going on. And it kind of was a catalyst for me to really start doing the work, or whatever you want to call it. But I knew that going forward sustainably, just with life in general, I couldn't keep doing what I was doing and also experience any type of health or happiness. And so, it's been a couple of years of just really digging into the discomfort and learning these hard truths, but I wouldn't have it any other way. And I'm happy to kind of share. I'm at that point now where I'm through the worst of it, and so I'm happy to kind of share what has worked for me and what has helped me, and I'd be happy to share it with you guys if that's something that interests you more. So let me know in the comments below how you like hearing about mindset stuff, if you want to know more, and I'll see you in the next video.